The stars above Thalros burned like distant fires, cold and untouchable. For the Thalrosi, their world had always been quiet, a gentle planet of rolling green plains and deep blue oceans. Their cities were built of soft stone, carved carefully over generations, filled with gardens, libraries, and places for music. The Thalrosi were a gentle people. They never fought, for they did not know war. Their lives were full of art, song, and the pursuit of knowledge. They dreamed, they healed, they sang, and they believed that the universe could be kind if one only reached out with a pure heart. But kindness had no place in the cold void. The Krell Dominion had arrived. Massive warships blotted out the sun like black storms. Their engines burned with fire that made the skies tremble. They came for Thalros because it was rich in rare minerals, and because they knew the Thalrosi could not fight. Resistance was meaningless. The Krell never spared mercy for those who could not defend themselves. From the tallest spires of Thalros, children and elders watched in horror as ships tore through the atmosphere. The Krell ships descended like predators, their weapons scanning the cities for targets. Panic spread like wildfire. Families fled into tunnels and caves. Parents held their children tightly, whispering prayers in a language that had never been tested against violence before. The air smelled of fear and ozone. The ground shook beneath them, and everywhere the cries of the Thalrosi mixed with the alien hum of the Krell engines. In their desperation, the Thalrosi did what they had never imagined. They reached out to the stars, not with weapons, not with ships, not with war, but with a voice. A simple, desperate voice. Their signal was broadcast across the galaxy, a message of fear and hope tangled together. We are peaceful. We are weak. We need help, please, anyone. It was a voice small and trembling against the vast emptiness of space, and yet it carried a weight that the Thalrosi felt deep in their hearts. Perhaps no one would come. Perhaps the call would vanish into nothing, ignored by empires far away. They had never imagined anyone would answer. Most of the galaxy had learned to look away. They had learned that the weak existed to be taken. The Thalrosi, with their soft songs and gentle hands, were considered nothing more than easy prey. Still they called. They had no choice. Watching their cities burn, seeing the lives of their loved ones threatened, they could not stay silent. And in the quiet moments between blasts and screams, in the brief seconds when the world seemed to hold its breath, they listened for any sign that anyone had heard them. Out beyond the Krell fleets, far from the burning skies of Thalros, a small blue world turned lazily around its sun. On that planet, humanity had grown hardened by struggle, by the merciless cruelty of their own world. Earth, a death world of harsh climates, deadly creatures, and endless challenges, had taught its children to survive. Humanity did not rely on luck. They did not trust kindness in strangers. They trusted skill, will, and the strength to protect the weak. And they heard the cry. The transmission was faint, almost drowned in the noise of a galaxy full of signals, but it reached human ears. A young operator aboard a Terran fleet ship paused, staring at the screen as the message repeated itself. We are peaceful. We are weak. We need help, please. Anyone. His heart clenched. Something about the desperation in the voice touched a part of him he did not know existed. He called his commander immediately. The commander, a veteran of countless battles across the stars, listened quietly. When the message ended, she did not laugh. She did not ignore it. She felt the weight of it, the fear, the hope, the helplessness of a people facing extinction. Her eyes softened. She remembered Earth's own cries for help long ago when humans had been weak, struggling against nature and themselves. She made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. They would answer, no matter the cost. Back on Thalros, the skies were darker than night. Smoke from destroyed buildings rose like black fingers clawing toward the heavens. Families huddled together in whatever shelter they could find. The Thalrosi priest prayed to their old gods, hoping the universe had not completely abandoned them. Children whispered to one another, holding tightly to dolls and small stones, hoping that anyone might come. The Krell did not care about prayers. They did not pause to watch the fear in the eyes of their victims. Their weapons tore through the streets, ripping apart homes and gardens alike. For the Thalrosi, it seemed as if the universe had forgotten them entirely. And yet, far beyond the reach of the Krell, humanity had heard. The Deathworlders were coming. For the first time in centuries, the Thalrosi dared to hope. a hope so fragile it trembled like a candle in the wind, yet so bright that it could pierce the darkness of despair. They did not know who would come, how many, or what they would face, but they knew one thing: they were no longer completely alone. The stars above Thalros, once silent witnesses to fear, seemed to shine a little brighter that night. And somewhere in the distance, the engines of humanity's ships began to hum, a sound of determination, of fury, and of mercy, all at once. The galaxy had forgotten the Thalrosi, but humanity never would. The skies above Thalros were filled with smoke and fire, a dark canvas that reflected the fear in every Thalrosi heart. Families clutched one another, praying, hoping, wishing that some miracle might arrive. But miracles were rare in a galaxy ruled by war and cruelty. The Krell ships patrolled the skies like predators, their weapons scanning, ready to strike at the slightest movement. Cities crumbled under their might. Gardens, homes, and monuments of centuries were reduced to rubble in moments. Every street echoed with the screams of the innocent. And then, in the midst of despair, the impossible happened. A new pattern of lights appeared on the edge of the planet's orbit. Small at first, almost too distant to be noticed, but moving with an unmistakable purpose. The Thalrosi froze, unsure what they were seeing. Their gentle eyes, unaccustomed to war, widened in disbelief. The lights grew brighter, faster, cutting through the smoke. These were not the Krell. These ships were different, smaller, rugged, scarred, yet with a determination that seemed to radiate from their very engines. The Krell noticed them too. At first they laughed. They thought it amusing that some foolish race would dare to challenge them. "Look," one Krell commander sneered through their communications. "The weak dare to interfere. How amusing." But the laughter died quickly. The ships moved with precision, weaving between the Krell vessels like predators hunting larger, slower prey. Their weapons fired, not with hesitation, but with deadly efficiency. Krell hulls that had once seemed invincible began to shatter, and the command of the Krell fleet wavered. They had never faced enemies who did not fear death, who attacked not for conquest but for protection. On Thalros, people peered from hiding, their faces pale but full of hope. Who are they?" a child whispered, gripping her mother's hand. Her voice trembled as the alien ships tore through the enemy. "They are the ones who came for us," the mother said, her voice almost a prayer. But even as she spoke, she could not imagine what kind of beings would fight for a planet they had never seen, for people they did not know. A booming voice suddenly carried across all communications, and even the Thalrosi could hear it. "This is the United Terran Fleet. You sent a call for help. We are here. Stand fast. You are not alone." The Thalrosi hearts leapt. Humans. They were called humans. Not graceful, not shining like some of the elder galactic races. They were rough, scarred, fierce, and fearless. They had come from a death world, a planet where life was harsh and unyielding, where survival demanded strength, courage, and endurance. They had heard the cry of the weak, and they had chosen to act. The Krell roared in anger. Their weapons fired with renewed fury, targeting the human ships. But the humans did not flinch. They moved like lightning, dodging blasts, striking Krell vessels with unexpected cunning. The Thalrosi watched in awe. Their people had lived in peace all their lives, and yet here were strangers risking everything, putting themselves in harm's way to defend them. One Thalrosi elder, kneeling among the rubble of what had once been a temple, whispered, They are like fire wrapped in flesh. How can anyone survive such courage?" And survive they did. The humans did not fight for glory or conquest. They fought for a promise, for a duty that transcended their own safety. Every ship they piloted, every maneuver they made was calculated to protect the weak. They understood something the Krell never could. That power was meaningless unless it was used to protect those who could not protect themselves. From orbit to surface, the battle unfolded like a storm. Krell ships burned and fell, their great engines twisting into the void. The human fleet, though smaller, seemed to grow with every strike, moving faster, thinking smarter, never giving up. On the ground, the Thalrosi tried to make sense of it all. They had never seen bravery like this. They had never imagined that strangers could care enough to risk death for their survival. In a small command center, a human captain barked orders. Her face was scarred, her hands worn from years of survival, yet her eyes burned with determination. "Keep formation. Protect the civilians. Do not let them escape. We are here to save lives, not to die in vain." The Thalrosi, peeking from the shadows, felt a strange warmth in their hearts. This was not just hope. They could feel the pulse of determination, the will to survive that had driven these humans across light years of space to reach them. The humans were fearless, relentless, and terrifying, and yet they were kind. As the first human strike shattered a Krell warship, a cheer rose from the hidden Thalrosi. It was a sound unfamiliar to them, raw and emotional, a sound of hope breaking free. And somewhere in the midst of that chaos, a young Thalrosi boy whispered, "We are saved." The humans had arrived. The Deathworlders had come. And for the first time in generations, the Thalrosi dared to believe that even in a galaxy full of darkness, light could still reach them. The sky above Thalros burned with fire, smoke, and the harsh light of weapons. The Krell fleet was larger, more powerful, and far more experienced in war than anything the Thalrosi could imagine. Their ships moved like dark predators, their energy cannons firing relentlessly. Buildings that had survived for centuries collapsed into rubble, sending clouds of dust and ash into the air. Every street shook, every home trembled. Fear clutched the hearts of the Thalrosi, as if the very planet itself were trembling in despair. But the humans did not waver. Their ships cut through the darkness with precision and determination. Though smaller than the Krell vessels, they moved with unmatched speed, dodging attacks and striking back with deadly accuracy. Every maneuver was a calculated risk, every shot meant to protect, to save lives rather than to conquer. On the ground, the Thalrosi watched in awe. They had never seen fighting on such a scale. Explosions lit the sky like brief, violent lightning, illuminating the terror in their own eyes and the fear in the Krell faces. Yet amid all the destruction, the humans pressed forward. They did not retreat. They did not hesitate. Their courage was infectious, filling the Thalrosi with a fragile hope they had long thought impossible. One human ship dove directly into the path of a Krell strike, taking the full force of an energy blast to shield smaller vessels behind it. From the broken remains of their ship, the pilot's voice came over the comms. "Move back. Get them to safety. We can rebuild. We will survive. Just get them out." The Thalrosi had never heard voices like these before. Angry, fierce, unyielding, but also filled with compassion. Each human sounded like they were fighting for more than survival. They were fighting for honor, for the weak, for the promise that no one would face death alone while they still breathed. In a small village, a Thalrosi healer tended to a group of frightened children, shielding them from the dust and smoke. She looked up at the sky, her hands trembling. A Krell fighter was falling, its engines ablaze, and yet, from the shadows of the chaos, a human fighter swooped down to intercept it, tearing the enemy apart before it could harm anyone below. The healer's eyes widened. They are saving us. They are risking themselves for us. Nearby, the elders huddled together in fear and wonder. They whispered to one another about courage, about sacrifice, about the impossible bravery of these beings from a distant world. One old man said softly, "These humans, they fight not for glory, but because it is the right thing to do. They are unlike anything we have ever known." In the vastness of space, human ships darted between Krell fire like lightning. They twisted, spun, and struck with unrelenting fury. Every Krell ship destroyed seemed to inspire the humans even more. They shouted orders to each other across the void, voices full of urgency and determination giving courage to those who had none. On the surface, the Thalrosi began to help as best they could. They used their knowledge of the land to guide survivors to safety, mark hidden shelters, and provide aid where the humans could not reach. Though they could not fight in the skies, their hearts and minds became part of the battle, a quiet resistance that strengthened the humans' efforts. A human captain, her face streaked with soot and sweat, barked orders through the comms. "Flank the Krell. Protect the civilians. No one dies today, not if we can stop it." Her words were harsh but filled with care. Every Thalrosi who heard them felt a mixture of fear and awe. They had never known that such strength could exist, that anyone would care enough to risk everything for strangers. The Krell began to falter. Their confidence, once absolute, cracked under the relentless human assault. They had faced countless enemies before, but never had they met beings who would embrace death for the sake of others, who moved with both fury and compassion at the same time. Every strike against them was not just force, it was purpose, a force driven by heart and honor, not by greed or conquest. From a ruined tower, a young Thalrosi boy watched a human ship swoop low, taking down a Krell fighter that had been targeting a group of children. His small hands clenched into fists. "They are like heroes," he whispered. Real heroes. His voice carried across the rubble, a small but bright echo of hope. For the first time, the Thalrosi began to believe that survival was possible, that even in a galaxy filled with darkness, there were beings who would fight not for themselves but for others. The humans, the Deathworlders, were more than warriors. They were protectors, saviors, and a beacon of hope. The battle had only just begun, yet already it was clear. These humans were unstoppable. Not because of numbers or firepower, but because they fought with something that no Krell ship, no weapon, no empire could destroy. They fought with heart, and in the heart of the Thalrosi, hope was reborn. The battle raged on, and the skies above Thalros were filled with fire, smoke, and the deafening roar of weapons. The Krell were relentless, their massive ships tearing through the air with ease, their energy cannons burning through everything in their path. The humans fought back with precision and determination. But the cost of each victory was already heavy. From the surface, the Thalrosi watched as human ships twisted and darted between blasts, striking at Krell vessels with incredible skill. Yet every move came with risk. A human fighter would take the brunt of a weapon, a ship would burn, and the lives inside hung by the thinnest thread. Explosions tore across the skies, sending shards of metal and fire raining down. The Thalrosi could only watch in horror and awe, seeing strangers risk death again and again for people they had never met. In a ruined city, a group of Thalrosi healers rushed to aid human soldiers who had crash-landed among the rubble. The humans were wounded, some bleeding heavily, others trapped under fallen beams. The healers had never seen anyone like them, strong even when broken, determined even when the odds were impossible. One young soldier, barely conscious, whispered to a healer as she bandaged his arm, "Keep going. Save them. We'll hold them off." His words were simple but full of courage and hope. Nearby, a human officer dragged a crew member from a burning ship, ignoring the flames that burned his hands. Sparks danced across his skin, yet he did not stop. A Krell fighter swooped down to strike again, and he raised his weapon, firing without hesitation. When the attack ended, he collapsed, burned and bruised, but smiling faintly. We're not done yet," he said, his voice hoarse but full of life. The Thalrosi, who had always been peaceful and gentle, could not comprehend this kind of courage. One elder, kneeling amid the ruins of his home, whispered to himself, "How do they endure so much pain and keep fighting? How can anyone bear so much and still care for others?" He did not answer his own question. There seemed to be no answer, only the quiet, relentless courage of the humans. Even in the heart of the battle, the humans showed kindness. They paused to shield civilian vessels, redirect attacks, and ensure that the Thalrosi could escape from danger. They offered words of comfort, instructions, and hope to a people who had only ever known fear. The Thalrosi began to realize that these Deathworlders were not just soldiers. They were saviors, willing to give everything to protect life itself. But every moment of triumph came with loss. Ships burned, crews fell, and each death weighed heavily on those who remained. A young Thalrosi girl watched as a human fighter fell from the sky, his ship torn apart by a Krell missile. Her small hands clutched her chest. They cannot all survive," she whispered. Tears ran down her face. Around her, others wept too, mourning both their enemies and the brave humans risking everything to save them. From the command center of the human fleet, a veteran officer barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Hold the line! Protect the civilians! Do not let them break through." She glanced at a destroyed ship, her eyes reflecting both rage and sorrow. She knew that many of her own would not survive the fight. Yet she could not stop, could not falter. The lives of the Thalrosi depended on her resolve, and she would give everything to see them safe. On the ground, the Thalrosi slowly began to aid the humans. They guided survivors through hidden paths, cleared rubble, and tended to the wounded. Though they were gentle and weak in comparison, they offered what help they could. Their hearts ached with grief at the sight of human sacrifice, but a strange warmth filled them too, a deep, growing respect for those who had come to save them. One human soldier, battered and bleeding, looked out over the planet's surface and spoke into his comms. "Every life matters. Every soul we protect is a victory. We fight because they cannot fight for themselves." His words echoed in the ears of the Thalrosi. They realized that the human strength did not come from weapons or ships. It came from heart, courage, and an unbreakable sense of duty. The Krell began to notice something strange. Their weapons were powerful, but their enemies did not falter. For every strike they landed, another human rose to meet it. For every fallen ship, another fighter took its place. They fought with a fury that could not be broken, a determination that came not from fear of death but from love for others. The Thalrosi could only watch and marvel. They had lived their lives in peace, never imagining such bravery, never knowing that such sacrifices were possible. And yet here it was unfolding before them. Humans, children of a harsh and unforgiving world, stood in the darkness and became a light that shone not for themselves but for all who could not fight. As night fell on Thalros, the fires of battle still burned, but hope had been born. The Thalrosi understood now that survival was possible. They had seen the true price of war, and they had seen the courage that carried it. And for the first time they knew that even in the darkest hour, there were those who would stand, fight, and protect. Not for gain, but because it was right. The Deathworlders had come. They had paid the price, and the Thalrosi would never forget it. The battle was over. The Krell ships had fled, scattered into the void, their roar of dominance silenced. The skies above Thalros, once ablaze with fire and destruction, now shimmered with the quiet glow of dawn. Smoke still rose from the cities, and the ground was scarred with craters and rubble. But the threat had passed. The Thalrosi, trembling and exhausted, stepped out of their shelters. Their eyes scanned the horizon, searching for the ones who had saved them. The humans, the Deathworlders, who had come when no one else would. On the surface, human soldiers moved among the survivors. Some were injured, their uniforms scorched and torn, yet they smiled faintly, offering words of comfort. Others helped carry the wounded, their hands gentle despite the scars and calluses earned from a harsh world. The Thalrosi could not comprehend the depth of these actions. These were strangers, beings from a distant planet who had risked everything to protect them. And yet they did not ask for thanks or reward. They acted simply because it was the right thing to do. A Thalrosi child ran forward, clutching a small wooden doll. She stopped in front of a human soldier and held it out timidly. "For you," she whispered. The soldier knelt, eyes softening beneath the grime and fatigue. "Thank you, little one," he said, his voice warm. "We fight so that everyone can have toys to hold, stories to tell, and dreams to follow." The child smiled, her eyes shining, and ran back to her family. The elders gathered in the central square, staring at the humans in awe. One, an old man with silver hair and hands that had never held a weapon, spoke softly. They did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for power. They fought because they care. Because they understand suffering. Because they know what it means to be weak and afraid. His voice trembled with emotion. They are more than warriors. They are guardians. A human commander, standing on the remains of a fallen building, looked out at the Thalrosi and spoke. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of everything they had endured. "You are safe now. Your world is still yours. We came because once, long ago, our own kind cried for help and we were alone. We swore we would never let another voice be ignored. Today we kept that promise." The Thalrosi could not hold back their tears. They had lived under fear for so long, believing that no one would ever come to help. And now these Deathworlders, rough, scarred, fierce humans, stood before them, alive but wounded, their sacrifice written in every mark and scar on their bodies. For the first time in generations, the Thalrosi felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope. Families emerged from hiding, hugging one another, and bowing in gratitude to the humans. They offered food, water, and whatever little gifts they could find. The humans accepted with quiet humility, but their eyes told the story of battles fought, friends lost, and the heavy cost of survival. Still, there was joy too. A joy born from knowing that the helpless had been protected, that courage had triumphed over fear, and that kindness still had a place in the galaxy. In the ruins of the city, a young Thalrosi boy approached a human soldier. "Why?" he asked softly. "Why did you risk everything for us? We are nothing to you." The soldier knelt to meet his gaze, his hands resting on his knees. "Because once we too cried for help," he said gently, "and no one came. We promised ourselves that no voice, no life would ever be ignored again. That is why we fight. That is why we survive. For those who cannot fight for themselves." The Thalrosi understood, their hearts swelling with gratitude and admiration. These humans were not just warriors. They were a force of mercy, courage, and compassion. They were the children of a death world, a place where survival demanded strength, endurance, and resilience. And now, they had brought those qualities across the stars to protect the weak, the innocent, and the helpless. As the sun rose higher, the survivors began to rebuild. The Thalrosi worked alongside the humans, clearing rubble, repairing homes, and planting gardens where destruction had once reigned. There was laughter too, small at first, then louder, as the children played once more in the streets. Music filled the air, soft at first, then swelling in gratitude and joy. It was a new beginning, forged in the fires of battle and sealed by courage. The humans prepared to leave, their ships gathering in orbit, engines ready for the long journey home. The Thalrosi gathered to watch them, their hearts full of respect and admiration. One elder raised his voice so all could hear. "You came when the galaxy abandoned us. You fought when no one else would. You are not just warriors, you are heroes. Thalros will never forget you." The commander of the Terran fleet nodded. "We do not seek glory," she said quietly. "We fight because it is right. Remember that, and your world will always be safe." And with that, the ships lifted, engines glowing, and disappeared into the stars. The Thalrosi stood silently for a long time, watching until the last glimmer of light vanished. Their hearts were heavy with gratitude, yet light with hope. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but they had learned something precious. Courage and compassion could overcome even the greatest darkness. And somewhere out there, humanity waited, ready to answer the cries of those in need wherever they might come. Thalros was saved. Its people were alive, and in the quiet of their hearts they knew the truth. When the weak cry for help, there are those who will answer. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they had given the galaxy a gift that could never be forgotten.